All right. Welcome to another episode of the Learner Centered Collaborative Podcast. I am so excited to have Michelle Bangara here today, middle school teacher. I have been fortunate enough to visit her classroom. Awesome teacher, awesome human. Thanks for joining us, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. You left out that you were also my expert on my panel. So that is also important for our relationship.
Minted Dr. Michelle, and I got to be on your dissertation committee, which was such an honor. I'm so excited to talk a little bit about your dissertation today and your work as a phenomenal middle school teacher. But first, can you share just a little bit about who you are and what are some of the key experiences that have led you to be the educator that you are today?
Yes, that's a large question. So let's see, this will be my 11th year teaching. And, I met you working in my current district, which was very different than the previous district I worked at. I think for me, my educational journey is one I would not change in terms of where I came from in the classroom, which you and I have talked about before. I was in a district that, outside measures say is underachieving. When I started teaching, we had lots of Title I kids. We have lots of latchkey kids there. And you're kind of forged in the fire as a teacher because a lot of the initiatives you're given when it comes to students who are performing quote unquote under standard is to really drill and skill those kids. There's lots of, assessments going on. There's lots of district, mandates regarding the curriculum you're teaching. And there's a tendency to really push kids into this rigid timeline of learning. And so what I learned there was actually invaluable. I learned about differentiating for students. I learned about what individual students needed. I learned how to manage all of that in the classroom so that we were providing a good educational experience. I learned how to, make lesson plans and to really go into curriculum and create units on my own because we needed to address what students needed to learn. And it was a tough environment and kids were amazing. They're never the ones who make it tough. After 5-6 years there, I had the opportunity to move to my current district where you and I met when you were consulting for us about learner-centered pedagogy. And I moved to that district, for my own professional and personal growth. I knew it offered more flexibility. Everything that I'd learned in my prior district was like begging me to go somewhere to use those skills with a little autonomy for myself. And so that's what I did. So I went to my current district in Arcadia, and it was right on that cusp of moving towards personalized learning with previously alt school and then with learner-centered collaborative. And I was lucky enough to pilot with you and work on that. And so that's kind of where I ended up here. And it piqued my interest enough so to focus my dissertation on it for my doctorate and to really focus on, the implementation process of learner-centered practices, not just in, underperforming schools where you're saying, hey, this is really going to get kids to understand critical thinking and all those things. It's necessary for students who are considered high performing as well, because we're teaching a different skill set. And so it was nice to kind of meld the two and see where we're going. And that's kind of where I've been at over the past 12 years.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just so fun to be in your classroom. It's so fun to see your connections. And as you know, I'm a former middle school teacher myself, ELA, lots of connections to our beliefs, practices. But it takes a special person to want to be in the middle school. So what are the things, like what drew you to be a middle school teacher?
Oh man, see, everyone says that when I say middle school, but I feel middle school is where it's at. Middle school is where it's at. In my teaching credential program, I was lucky enough to go to a credentialing program that was really rigorous. We had to do an entire year of student teaching. And for the secondary credential, you had to do an entire semester at the middle school level, an entire semester at the high school level. My master teachers were amazing. The year after I actually got my credential, one of my master teachers went on to be the teacher of the year for the United States under President Obama. So that was awesome. Yeah, that was awesome. She lives across the way from me too. That was awesome. I learned so much from them. When I went and started teaching high school, I was like, because I did my student teaching there first, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the place. This is it. This is awesome. And then I went into that middle school classroom. I was like, wow, I was wrong. This is the place. This is so fun. And I think that's what middle school brings, it is like this cusp of adulthood that kids are still deciding who they want to be. And they're really at that point discovering a lot about themselves. And that includes their strengths and talents. I mean, you see all these things all the time where someone says, like, I've seen this on Twitter where mom was like, my kid came home and their teacher called them an artist. And now they're so excited and they want to do XYZ. Middle schoolers are like that. And so they really are searching, and they have almost like this tender grasp of what their talents and skills are. And we as teachers get this awesome opportunity at that age to help guide them along in that and really encourage it. And they are so excited to hold on at that point. And so I think for me, that's what you need as a middle school teacher. You need to see what kids are excited about, and then you get to watch them blossom into that talent. And you can't really replace that. You can't. They're still looking for some guidance. They're still looking for a relationship. They want you to be proud of them. They want to work hard. And that's a feeling you really can't find, in my opinion. You can't find that anywhere else.
No, it is, like you said, it's an awesome opportunity that you get to be able to coach and guide and support.
Mhm.
But it also means you have to be looking for that potential. You have to be wanting to connect with kids. You have to be interested in who they are and what's possible for them to help them see those things in themselves.
Yes, you do. And, everyone says, not the martyr aspect of teaching, like it's this draining thing. I think if we change the perspective and instead like view it as this awesome opportunity to be part of,
Yeah.
We are working in tandem with their families. We're working in tandem with their friends who are also encouraging, that those bonds that they make when they find something in common, right? So it's not all on us. It's not. And I think it's important that I always say that, because there's this aspect of when you first start teaching that, oh, if I don't do it, no one will. And it's like, no, but they will. So, we're there, like you said. I love that you use the word mentor, guide, coach, because these kids come to us with all of that already embedded, and they come with their friends and they come with their family and they come with their experience. And then we get to come alongside and say, hey, you discovered this small part of you, and I'm here to encourage it. And so that to me is like the fun part. We look for it, but we don't have to look that hard. Like they know it, it's there.
Yeah, it shows up in the best ways. And, I know you have a great relationships with your students. I'm still friends with some of my young students and connected to them. Now they're my 7th graders. Back in the day are young adults and having kids of their own. But every once in a while they reach out and like, hey, I remember that you cared about us. And I remember that we had fun in your class and you taught me how to do X, Y, and Z. And those are really, really special moments, especially now that I have 2 middle schoolers of my own. There's nothing more that I want. I see how much time they spend at school and with their friends, and to know that there are other adults who have their best interests at heart, who are looking after them and connecting with them, is really invaluable.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's what, drives us to love our jobs. There's an intellectual aspect of our jobs that I think people don't realize that's also extremely fulfilling for me. I mean, there's so much creativity in our job. There's also so much intellectual work in putting together learning opportunities, which I personally enjoy. But the second part is that, right? The second part is these kids who are engaged in it and excited about the opportunities that they have in the classroom. And it's both. It's definitely a nice mix of both.
I love it. So one of the things that struck me when you were talking about your experience, you talked about your really powerful student teaching program and your mentors. And I often hear, teacher preparation programs are not always great. And a lot of people lament the programs and what they're experiencing. But I also had such an incredible teacher credential program. And I feel like those are commonalities of people who are loving the work, that those programs make a difference. Our experiences that we have that shape us as educators, when we can see what's possible, when we can work under really high quality educators, learn their craft, learn their strategies, just be part of that excitement. It is such a catalyst for great teaching and learning in our own practice. So
Yeah.
how do we get more of that, right? Like, how do we create, help people understand that not all programs are created equal, and there are some really great programs out there that do help people become amazing teachers.
Yes. And it's so funny that you want to focus on that a little bit, because I was talking to my dad about it the other day, in terms of his business, and just one of the things about the credentialing program that I think people need to really grasp and hold on to, because it is a lifelong skill that is necessary for personal growth. So I will say it is the huge structural issue, one, as to why some credentialing programs are better than others. And there's a lot that goes into it. As you know, credentialing is extremely expensive. I mean, to have the undergraduate, then to go and get your credential, most times, a lot of educators like myself will get a master's as well. So, I have a master's in education and curriculum and instruction. I got permission from the university to do it simultaneously after my first semester. So but I was taking 2 course loads at once, and I was sleeping maybe 3.5 hours a night, because I was teaching basically in Malibu. I live in Pasadena. And so I would get up at like 3:45 every morning, but I was working at a cocktail bar at night to support myself, support myself and have money. And it's like teaching all day during the day and then driving straight there to university. And, I went to USC and I'd had a rigorous schedule there before, but doing 2, master's programs at once, student teaching for free during the day. I mean, those are all the things that really inhibit choices when teachers are saying, I want to do this. I want to really invest my time in becoming the best I can be. But when you know that those constraints are in place, it's very easy then to look for a credentialing program that does not require a year of student teaching. Then instead, it's 4 weeks at a time, one semester, 4 weeks at a time, the next semester. And as we know, just as regular learners, we learn from practice. We don't learn from a book. And for something like teaching, you have to have the practical application of it. It's great to learn all the theory in class. It's great to have mentors. You have to see it. You have to experience it. You have to get the actual feedback one-on-one, and then you have to apply it. And the longer you can do that, the better it is. I happen to have that experience. So though I was, only sleeping like 3.5 hours a night, I was working at 2 different restaurants. I worked
You're
7
young.
days.
It's all
Yeah.
right.
No, Katie, I don't even know how I did it. Like now when I have to get up to go to the gym before work, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, how did my body handle this? Like, how did I physically, not even mentally, like mentally, I think you just kind of get in the zone. And at a certain point, you're just going. But now I don't even know how physically I could do it.
Yeah. It's crazy what you allow yourself to get used to. But I think just being really, you're right about the program. People don't realize sometimes what teachers have to go through to get their credentials, especially in California, beyond your 4 or 5 year degree, whatever it takes, beyond your undergrad. There's actually the credential process, which is unfortunately inhibiting for a lot of teachers. Like you said, they don't have the time or resources to invest and not work, right? That's really hard.
If there was opportunities, to get it funded for us to really spend the time of not only just being in the classroom for a year under a really good mentor and coach, I think that would make a huge difference in the output. What my dad and I were talking about was, I think the number one great aspect of my teachers that I worked under for a semester, one, they never left the room. They didn't butt in or do anything. But I was telling my dad, I was like, I think this is why I am so open to critique a lot. Because I do view it as a learning experience, because my credentialing program was that way. So my 2 student master teachers, I would teach and they would hand scribe the entire hour. And then I would go back to my car with Rebecca would type hers, but Stephanie would hand scribe on that I don't even know what that copy paper is, where you peel off one and she keeps a copy, and it's whatever that old copy paper is.
Yes.
But I
The
remember
triplicate.
yes, I
Yeah.
remember as a student teacher, that is what I was striving for and looking forward to. And that was what I always had, like this,
Mhm.
but this positive anticipation of what was going to be said that day to me as feedback. And I would scan it looking for the things that they thought I could improve on, where they were like, well, a student asked you this question and here's how you responded. Is there a different way you could have handled that? Do you think that you stopped their thinking, or did you help to guide it? And
Yeah.
so all of that, I remember like every day sitting in my car, wherever I parked at the school sites. And before I even went home, I had to read it in the car
Yeah.
because I wanted that feedback so much. And I knew it wasn't criticism. I knew it was feedback. And that is what made my student teaching program beneficial. That, I think it's the number one thing, because I learned for 10 months straight that it is okay for someone else to question your pedagogy.
It's,
And is it okay? It's okay to have the conversation
yeah.
and take your ego out of it.
And not even just okay, it is necessary for growth,
Oh,
right? So like
100%.
same thing. I had this incredible team of teachers that collaborated. The way they taught us was interdisciplinary, our teachers. And then we went, and same thing, we had year-long assignments and 2 different placements, but I had great mentor teachers, 2 very different, but would give me feedback. They were caring, they trusted me, but they were also constantly giving me feedback. But I think the best feedback I actually got was my first year of teaching. My new teacher mentor was phenomenal. And she would do exactly what you just said. She would come in my room. She would ask me what I was working on, some things that I, wanted to improve on. And she would look for them. She would give me feedback. She would give me examples. She would, of course, celebrate things that were going
Mhm.
well, but she would always give me that next step. She would always bring me in to see other people teach. And those practices, I think, cemented for me. It doesn't stop when you were done with your credential. It
Yes,
doesn't stop when you get a teaching job. It's only just
exactly.
beginning.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, I think I don't ever remember a piece of praise that it happened. It has always happened, right? We get that. And people are like, that was great. That was awesome. Those things are so almost unimportant. You know what I remember? I remember Rebecca telling me once, if more than 3 people raise their hand and ask you the same question, you didn't teach it well. It's not that they didn't learn it well. I still remember that. That's what I remember. And it's because that was it was criticism, but
Right.
it was not anything to do with if she thought I was a good teacher. I had to take that out of it. It had nothing to do with that. She was saying it could be better, and here are the steps. And I had to receive it. And so I always, from that very first experience student teaching, right? Anytime a kid asks, kids raise their hand and more than 3 ask the same question, I stop the class, I adjust because I didn't do it right.
Right.
And so I think that, that one piece of criticism and feedback that I got from her in that lesson, I think I have held on to that. And I think it kind of just molds perfectly with learner-centered practices,
Yeah.
because it is about the learner. And so we have to take it away from it being about us. It's not about me. It's not about my method. It's not about how I taught it. It's about how you received it and learned it. And if you didn't, guess what? Then myself as the facilitator has to adjust to a way where you can receive it. And I think that's what I really think teacher credentialing programs need. We need that self-reflection piece, which is a huge part of learner-centered practices, right? We need ourselves, that self-reflection piece where we can take ourselves out of it and really, look at what we're doing and work together to make it a better version, to collaborate, to get to practices that work for kids. And I think that's the one thing I'm just like, so for myself, that experience with my master teachers, that constant feedback, that constant edging me towards growth,
Right.
and their ability to sit down with me face to face and say it to my face.
Yeah.
They were always like, you're very good at this. I think you have a natural talent, but also this.
Right.
And so I think that's, that is what a coach does, right? The deliberate practice of edging you towards greatness.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our credentialing programs need. We need that vulnerability, that transparency, that honesty,
Yeah.
so that we challenge people in our programs.
And when you just said the coaching piece, right? So what your cooperating teachers or master teachers had were coaching skills. Right?
Oh yeah.
They were obviously very skilled. And that makes a huge difference too, when our mentors have the skills and tools to make you feel valued, to sit down with you and have that radical candor to be able to say, hey, you're good. And here's your next step.
Yeah.
And here's how you can take your practice further, and giving you those tools to say, if 3 people, whatever it is, you have that now in your bag of tricks to say, you're going to be planning that way. Gosh, how can I be really clear so everyone gets it? But then what are my checks for understanding?
Right.
If they don't, then I need to revise. And I think sometimes we get really frustrated. Like you said, like our ego is in it. Well, I did it. And people have said I'm good. So, it's your fault if you didn't get it, rather than the context has changed, sometimes from one period to the next.
Yes.
That lesson killed it in the first period. In the second period, it bombed, right? So like, that's where you have to iterate depending on who's in front of you and what the needs are.
Yeah, it is one self-check I do on myself every day. Am I frustrated while I'm teaching? Why? And, frustration comes from not getting the outcome you want. But if I'm not getting the outcome I want, is it me or is it them? So that is my one self-check all the time. And I think that has helped also the culture of my classroom. It's okay to be frustrated as a teacher. There are times when, yes, kids are not doing what they're supposed to do, right? But if we constantly jump to that, and I think I had to learn that, like, it's a practice still 11 years in, where I start to feel the frustration. I have to check myself, because if I'm frustrated, I have also learned over 11 years, they're frustrated too. Like, no one wants to sit in your classroom and feel stupid. No one wants to sit in a group and feel like they're the one not contributing. Right. And so I think that is my number one piece of advice. It's my number one practice of when things are going well. I'm going to say 99% of the time it's them, not me. When things are going poorly, 99% of the time it's me, not them. And so we call that like the window in the mirror, right? There's some people who, when things are going great, they see a mirror. And then when things are going poorly, they see a window. And so for me, that is essentially what Rebecca told me 11 years ago. Not in those terms, the window mirror theory is, something I learned later, but it definitely is something that I try and hold on to, because it has changed, myself as an educator in terms of how I enjoy teaching. And then, of course, it changes the culture of a classroom when kids also have the strength to come up to you and say, I don't get this. Well, my kids don't mind saying that. This doesn't make sense. I don't get it, because I'm not going to blame them for not getting it. I'm going to just, make it concise. Okay, specifically, what don't you get? Are you having problems with the process? Do you not understand the content? Do you need to bounce an idea off of me? What don't you get? Because we can adjust. But without that window mirror mentality, you're not going to get there with kids. And so I was lucky. I learned that super early. I learned that in my student teaching.
Right. Well, in those practices, and that we don't realize how those habits early on, I think even just having this conversation, thinking about those habits that we build early on, is it okay to get feedback? Like, some people have told me about their student teaching experience, and they did one lesson. They sat and observed all semester long and did one lesson, and it were like, that was horrible, but they never had a chance to improve. Right. And so you go in with that mentality that, like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of feedback because it just means I'm not doing a good job. And so the way that we internalize feedback, and I just love hearing your questions that you ask yourself and how you're processing, because that sets the tone. We say, like, our emotions are contagious. So if you're open and you're reflecting on whether or not you're frustrated, you're creating that environment for your students to be also metacognitive about their thinking and understand when they don't know something as well, not just shut down, which is
Right.
so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and I teach middle school. So sometimes the frustration is because they're frustrating. Sometimes the frustration has very little to do with the learning process and the fact that they're 11, or 12, or this year, I taught 8th grade, 14. So some of that frustration, but again, it's a reflective tool. It's not that all the time, like, oh, I'm frustrated and it's because I'm not doing it. Someone's like, I'm frustrated and 99% of you are doing it. One of you's on your phone. Like, that's okay too. That's okay too. Like, we have to admit that. I think it's just a practice.
Right.
Like, it's a practice to have in place so that when it is us, we at least have stopped to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And then when it is them, it's okay to acknowledge that as well and say, listen, we have gone through this and you have the ability and you already have demonstrated you know how to do it, and today you're choosing not to. So let's focus on that. Like, what do you need to adjust and change in order to be part of this space, be part of this learning, be part of this engagement? And sometimes, but that's a tool too. I mean, because that's a coaching tool of, okay, I get it, everything's in place for you, and so what do you need? Like, what do you actually need to take part in this? Because it's not always 100% one way or the other. I can't say, hey, every time I'm frustrated, it's the kids are perfect and that's teaching is great, like, no, I mean, they're kids, they're people, they have their days too, just like I do. So I think for me, I just try and use it as that stopping point. I try and just use it as, all right, stop, reflect. What's going on? What is it? I can't move straight to frustration. I got to do this first. Like, this is the stopping point, and then I can appropriately respond. Sometimes the appropriate response is, hey guys, it's me. Like, no one gets this. And then sometimes the appropriate response is, no, it's you. So tell me what you need and we'll address it. Like, do you need quiet time? Should we not do this collaboratively because you guys can't focus today? Is that what you need? All right, we'll do that. Is it that you have been doing it independently and you prefer collaboration? All right, we need that too. Like, I mean, it goes both ways. It's just a good tool to have in the tool.
Well, you're teaching them to understand, everyone to stop and reflect. Yeah. So I just saw this post on Instagram that I want to highlight and share. So it was on your post, and it said, Jacob, Alejandro, and I worked together to make this thank you video for you. We enjoyed what you taught us this year and will never forget the fun project and assignments in your class. Thank you for teaching us. Oh my God. That is the sweetest. So like, this is an email that you said from your students. And at a time when we're focused on, kids are so apathetic and they're frustrating, all the things we were just talking about, you had young boys in middle school go out of their way to make a video, tell you how much they appreciated you and your class and all the things they learned, and send you an email. Like, let's unpack this. What's happening in your classroom, all right, aside from the coaching conversations that's leading to this?
Let's unpack it. I will start with this. I love social media. I love Twitter. I love Instagram. I love all of those things. I think that sometimes they get very siphoned into certain views of how things exist in the world that are not accurate to everyone's experience. An example of this is virtual learning. As you know, I did a podcast with Katina. I loved the virtual learning experience. I mean, my class was so fun being online with those kids. It was ridiculous. It was fun. And I got through as much curriculum in virtual learning as I did in the regular school year. And those kids turned in work. I didn't have missing work. And part of that is the community I teach in. So I can't give myself credit for that. I mean, I teach in an East Asian community. They highly value education. Parents are extremely supportive. If there are any issues in class, they are available to us always. I've never called a parent who has not said, well, let me come in and let's meet in person. They have always said yes. So part of that is just the environment that I am in. The other part is kids want to learn. I mean, they do, like they really do. And so I have not in the past 3 years, not that it hasn't been difficult. It has been, there's been a lot of extra work. It's been mentally taxing being on Zoom for a long time, etc. But I don't see kids disengaged. I just don't. I don't see it in my classroom. I don't see it with them with each other. Are there some kind of procedural things kids needed to catch up on? Sure. I explicitly taught them. And then we worked on them all year. And they're kids. I had to keep that in mind. Like, yo, you're 11. Like, if you're goofing around, I mean, that kind of makes sense to me, you know, like, so it's those kinds of things too. Like there has to be some flexibility. Like this is an environment where we should be enjoying what we're doing together, not in the sense that it's fun, but in the sense that you're engaged in it,
Yeah.
you know, like the time should go by faster even because you're doing.
Yes.
So I will say that these kids, oh my God, they kill me, man. They kill me. Those 3 boys, I was so, yeah. I mean, they sent me that video and I can tell you how it came about. One kid for one project, I don't even remember what it was. They had to turn something in. And I gave them some options for their product. And I said, okay, you can do, you know, you can use Canva, you can use a Google slide. If you want to hand draw this, like whatever. And again, I don't even remember the project, but one of the students, Arvind, he said, can I make a movie? I said, of course you can. Like, what do I care? Like, you know, and my thing is like, I don't know how to do that. Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
And so he ended up making a stop motion movie type thing, like a cartoon movie for whatever program he has access to that his parents have bought him. It was awesome. And I remember I came in the next day and I was like, Arvind, I loved your movie. Like it was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, the content was really rich, but also just the fact that he could figure out how to do that. Like tell me to make a movie on iMovie. And I'm like, I don't have 82 hours. I don't know how to figure that out. So from there, you know, a lot of stuff where he saw that it fit. He would always ask if he could do a movie, make a movie, could he edit a movie? And then I had a project that I had to do and I actually sent it to him and I said, hey, I need this movie made. If I send you some stuff, can you re-edit it? And he was like, yeah. And I said, okay. I said, you know, I know this will take you some time. You know, our school is right next to In-N-Out. And I said, so if you do this for me, go ask your parents if I could just pick out In-N-Out for you and one friend. And that's to say thank you for spending the weekend making this for me because I really need it done. And he was like, okay, you don't have to do that, but okay. I was like, no, I appreciate it. So he did this project for me and he re-edited a video for me because I saw he had the skill, like he had the talent, you know, and it would take him maybe an hour and it would take me all weekend. So he made this video and I played it in class. You know, it was something that we were putting on our First Avenue news. So I played on the news and I was, you know, and I was like, everyone, Arvin made this for me. Like it's about our class and he made it. And so I think from there, like, I do think part of it was I acknowledged that he had this interest. And then I acknowledged that he did it way better than me. I don't know how he did it. And so I think for him, it was his idea to make the video. And I think Alejandro and Jacob wanted to be part of it because they wanted to say like, thank you. And you know, that's what you get when you encourage kids. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like you tell the kindergartner you're an artist and they think they're an artist. You tell a 6th grader they're a movie maker. They think they're a movie maker.
And they are, right?
And they are.
He is.
And they are, you know, and so I think that was part of it. I was like so blown away. I was totally surprised. It was super cute. And I was like, these kids, oh my God, they really do kill me, man.
Yeah. But I think you're creating that space for them to try out their passions. You're highlighting them and validating it and giving them chances to improve and grow. I mean, that's really, really powerful and guaranteed. Like you don't even remember the project. He probably doesn't either, but he will remember the opportunity. He will remember the ideas that he was able to put together to create videos for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And that's what's funny. I mean, I feel like kids aren't a secret because we were all kids. Right. And even like with Alejandro, you know, English apparently was not his subject. He was my best student though. And I remember telling his mom, I was like, I just love him so much. Like he just has this, like, he will raise his hand for everything. He has no fear. And she's like, well, that's, you know, so different from before. And I said, but everything, he just wants to relate. He wants to engage. He wants to raise his hand. He wants to lead his team. And I told him that, you know, it's not enough for us to keep it up in here. We have to be okay sharing that with kids. And so sometimes it's just, you have to share it when it comes out. And I remember I said that to him. I said, you have something that a lot of kids don't have. I said, you will just push yourself to engage in this class. And from the second I said that, best student all year in terms of, you know what I mean? Because it's not a secret. And I always tell them that, like, learning's not a secret. Right. Everything we do here is not a secret. You know, I'm not trying to keep even your skills and talents. Like it's not like you have to be a B and then I keep you at a B all year until the very end and I can give you an A. Like, that's not how it works. Like, we focus on what you have, and if you have it, you have it, you know? And so I think that's part of it too. Like, kids can know like where they stand. I think we
Right.
should tell kids transparently where they stand.
Right. And you care about them,
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
supporting
100%.
them, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your dissertation.
Okay.
You recently defended your dissertation. And again, so honored to be on your committee. And so will you just share a little bit about your research and kind of what you did before we get
Sure.
into some of the findings?
Yeah, so my research is on the implementation of learner-centered teaching practices in a majority East Asian community. I did that obviously because it relates to me. I do teach a majority East Asian students, though our demographics are changing in the city I teach in a little bit, but I still have about 65% East Asian students, mostly being Chinese, adhering to Confucian heritage culture. Um, and then learner-centered practices, obviously that's a huge pedagogical trend. It's, a business trend that's occurring right now. So it was melding the two of, we see the benefits of this, but what are also the challenges of implementing it?
Mhm.
And a lot of times educational research focuses on low achieving students. And, rightfully so, we need to see how we're closing resource gaps, et cetera. But I work with a high achieving population, which means that in theory, we should be able to implement new pedagogy, because we have students who are on grade level, we way outperform state averages, way outperform. We're still, again, we just got an award for top 10 schools in California. So we have the family support, we have the cultural values of education. And so that's what my research was on. Just what did key stakeholders think the barriers to implementation were? And then what supports did they think were needed to address those barriers? And so I interviewed, for mine, it was qualitative research, teachers, principals, coaches, and parents who adhered to Confucian heritage culture to see, in what way, if any, Confucian heritage culture impacted the implementation of learner-centered pedagogy.
Yeah. So one of the things you found that I think we have talked about this before, and it expands to a lot of high performing cultures beyond Eastern Asian cultures. You found that there was a lack of urgency to shift practices in these high performing cultures. Can you talk more about this finding?
Yeah, so I think the best way to sum it up is one of the principals said that good is the enemy of great. And I'm sure we've heard that term before.
Yeah.
When we look at the implementation of learner-centered practices, we have research that shows it does XYZ for achievement and engagement and motivation and high school graduation rates. Well, what if you already have high achievement and a 99.9, our school has 100% graduation rate, 100%. So what do you do when the reasons for shifting are based solely on that? Well, you don't shift. That's what you do, because you're saying we're doing this because of these things. And I think the messaging has to be changed a little. And that's not, a district thing. That's an educational thing of what do we really want kids to get out of learning. And so there was this tendency, which was really interesting, for teachers to kind of hold on to their practice because there was not a need to shift in their mind, because the measures of what good education are have been stagnant of achievement. And so now, I did have participation bias. Obviously, the teachers that I were interviewing, they chose to be interviewed because they do believe in learner-centered practices. So they were very much saying, this is the way to go. But I asked them, what stops you? And so a lot of it that came out kind of, in between those answers, like in a lot of the bulk of the data, was that students are high achieving, that, what it doesn't matter kind of what pedagogy we use, they'll always achieve.
Yeah.
And so we had to we have to pull that apart and say, well, what are we trying to get? But that good of the enemy of great was one of the things. And it had to do a little bit with control, which other research has shown, but it was a little different in this district, just because they kind of felt kids can achieve. Like we have very high faith in our population.
Right.
And
Well, and I
so,
think you
yeah,
hit the nail on the head though, is like, what is success? If
right.
success is, which frankly, I think is a low bar, right? Like, you know, high performance on a standardized test score, it's a low bar to be able to have those, and not all communities can, but
Right.
a community with resources and access and support, you know, can and should be able to go beyond that. We want all kids to be critical thinkers, collaborators,
Yeah.
right? Have the skills to solve problems.
Right.
But if we're not measuring those things, we're not holding that up as success, then the bar remains the industrial metrics that we've been measuring for a long time.
Yeah. And as you know, with my data, there is also, you know, a miscommunication, misperception regarding what parents perceive or what teachers perceives parents wanted and what
Yeah.
parents actually wanted. All stakeholders had actually the same, there was a consensus as to what success was. Like success was kids who are well-rounded, success was kids who could critically think, etc. Teachers totally thought that, they adhered to that. They pushed that. We need our kids to be able to work together. We need them able to critically think. We need them to not look for a standardized test. We need them to know how to navigate options. All teachers believe that. All administrators believe that. All parents believe that. So that's the interesting part. I think one of the things my research shows was that there was a miscommunication and misperception amongst stakeholder groups. And that's not hard to see why. I mean, because we see the system our kids are in. They are in an industrialized system. They are in an A through G requirement. They are in a very standards-based college application environment. And so it's when parents say, hey, you know, yeah, I want to make sure my kid gets into college, there is this part where our brain goes, oh, so you want them to have good grades. Now, that's not what the parent said, you know, so we have to navigate that too. And again, just like I said, we have to be transparent with our kids in our classrooms about what we really want them to get out of. I think these conversations have to happen with parents as well.
Yeah.
If we're getting those emails, if we're having these communications, we have to say, what is it exactly you want out of this? What exactly is your concern? We can't assume the concern because we don't know what their perception is of the system. I asked my parent stakeholders, describe for me what a classroom should look like, sound like, feel like. What should a student be doing? Every element they talked about, East Asian parents who adhere to Confucian heritage culture, which has the stereotype and perception that they are very much standards aligned, high stakes testing, et cetera. My parent participant said the opposite of that. They said, I want them to be working in groups. I'm so jealous. They walk in now and they have all of these choices and some of them get to use the computer. Some of them are writing, some of them, and they were and they talked so much about, I want my kid to enjoy learning with a B instead of be miserable with an A.
Yes. Love that.
And so, that's one unique aspect of my research is that it showed this misperception between the Eastern and Western lens and this miscommunication that existed because of it, when there was actually a consensus regarding what good teaching and learning was. And I think that's something we can all take a lesson from in our own just personal classrooms. When we get that email, when we get that call, my kid has an F, and we assume, well, they just want an A and and we go to grades, and
Right.
we have to stop doing that. If we really want to change the way people view education, we have to call parents to the table because they already have a seat. And we have to, we get so caught up in our own terminology and language, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Every industry does, it's not just us. But we have to open the door and we have to say, your student has an F. Tell me your concerns. You know what a parent 99% of the time says? I'm concerned they don't understand it. They don't say, I'm concerned that they don't have an A. No, I'm concerned that they don't get it.
Right.
Okay,
What
so
can
you're
we do to
concerned,
help?
right?
Right.
Well, they're concerned about the process.
Yeah.
And we like to imagine that they're concerned about something else because it makes it easier for us.
Well, and I think what you're highlighting though is like these assumptions we make, right?
Right.
We make a lot of assumptions, just like you said, the perception of what success is. And I think when you talked about it in your research, it was this self-perpetuating cycle. Someone
Yep.
says something, the principal says something, the teacher reacts based on what they think success is. And then parents react based on what they think they're supposed to do, instead of just saying, wait, let's stop, like you're saying, right? Let's stop and let's ask back, let's clarify. what is it that we really want? If we really know that we have a different view of success, we have to start asking different questions. We have to start, having different conversations and really start to stop the hamster wheel, right? Of just like going around this cycle to think about how we're going to do it differently.
Mhm.
So I want to ask, what is your advice, right? You're a teacher, you're an educator who's getting success on multiple levels, right? Like you're developing the whole child as a middle, academically, socially, emotionally. What is one piece of advice that you would give to teachers who are like, I hear what Michelle is saying, I want to shift practices. What's something I can do to just start?
Oh man. It's weird. I never feel I'm in a position to give advice. There's so many excellent teachers out there. And there's so much that goes into creating an environment you want to be a part of. So I guess for me, um, the number one advice, which is just what we tell kids too with the work that they're doing, is to reflect on what we're doing.
Mhm.
Um, which you and I have talked about. Reflecting on my practice has led me to where I am, and it's not pretty. I mean, it's some of it's downright ugly. I think, and now as I've been in the classroom for over a decade, I see new teachers and there's some things that I see about their practice and I'm like, oof, but I only have that reaction because it was me, and so an example of that is when I first started teaching, we all go into teaching because we realize the importance of education. My dad is from India. He highly values education. He has 82,000 degrees. He's highly successful. It was just an expectation in our household. Like that's part of the culture. Um, but my dad valued learning. Like because it gave him so much in the United States. Like his education, he came with nothing. His education, which was a privilege, provided him with the opportunity to do very well here. So I went into teaching with that burden of education does so much. And so I went with this mentality of rigidity and inflexibility. If you didn't do homework, you were throwing your life away. Like if you did not understand, don't you see that if you can't do this, this is your life? And that burden and that mentality, we call it the savior mentality of if I don't get them to get this, then what? And it leads to rigidity. It really does. And it leads to practices that are harmful for kids, and it leads to not seeing them as individuals. Like I said, I originally worked in a Title I school with latchkey kids. So you didn't do your homework, but I did not have the reflective tools at that point to step back and say why, and say, okay, but there's no one helping you. But the kids I taught were incredibly independent and critical thinkers. And that came from how they grew up. I mean, they were, I work in a quote unquote high performing district right now. It was a huge transition for me, I will say, to move districts because of that. My kids in my previous district, I would give them a very complex problem. They could talk about it for 30 minutes because they knew how to do that because they did it all the time.
Right. And we don't always value that, right? So being able to value the skills.
I saw the contrast. So I saw the contrast. And so for me, even now, like looking back at some of my practices of rigidity, of inflexibility regarding work and valuing work over learning, those are things that I've had to untangle over a decade of, obviously we should have outcomes that support learning works. I will be the first person to pour over, state testing benchmarks and stuff like that. Not to do with kids, but to do with me, like what do I need to look at? And that's the other thing, we just have to shift the lens to ourselves a little bit. And I think when you do that, what you do is you open yourself up to growth and possibility and to the advice and tools of other experts. And that's what I can say is everything I've done, there's a part of it that, yes, there's natural ability or there's talent or I enjoy it. So I'm willing to put in 10 hours a day doing XYZ for a lesson plan. Like, of course, there's that. The other part is being willing to sit with a person and very transparently be like, I don't like that idea. Why are you doing it that way? Or for them to say that to me, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like, what is the purpose of this? And so I think when you are first reflective with yourself, you allow other people to be vulnerable and reflective with you and to
Love
push
that.
you. And I think
Yeah.
it's important for all of us to be pushed. Like we get, like you said, we have new clientele every year. So we need to be pushed every year so that we're meeting the needs of those kids.
Yeah. Every year, every day, all the time. Yeah. And I love that your reflection has allowed you to be open and learn with and from others, but also teach others.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some rapid fire to close this.
Oh,
Okay.
geez.
So, first question, what is one thing we should stop doing in education?
Marking assignments late and taking off points, because it's not a measure. Grades should be a measure of actual capability and competency, not the other stuff.
Yes. What's one thing we should start doing?
Start doing. There's so many things we should start doing. Okay, I don't know if people like this. We should make the school day shorter. Like we should. Distance learning did that, and kids were a lot more focused. And like I said, we shortened the school day and I got through as much content because kids weren't exhausted.
Yeah, I'm always for like the 4-day work week. So what should we keep doing?
I think we should keep moving in the direction that we are. And I think that we should keep what we have in terms of, we view teachers to be capable and invested in kids. And we should keep that mentality. Like, regardless of what's going on outside, we have to know that we're invested, and we have to then extend that to our colleagues. And I think, that is very important, like to have really, to not just know that I can do it, but we need to keep that faith in our colleagues as well, I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just finished your dissertation. You're
Yeah.
now a doctor. What are you focused on right now? What are you focused on doing or learning?
Okay. I am taking a break from my doctorate. I am. So one of the things I did tell you to remind me of this. So I teach a course at UCLA. It is not through UCLA, the university. I teach a course through the project management office with UCLA Health. And so it's more like a corporate entity, not UCLA, the college. Well, it's all funded by UCLA, the university, but they have a project management office. Obviously, UCLA is like $1 billion industry. They have their hands in everything, hospitals, marketing, trainings, all blah, blah. So I'm teaching project management right now. And I did last year too, as you know. I teach the study sessions. They brought me on really as a teacher because they're not teachers. They work in corporate. So my boss is named Ian, and he's awesome. And he teaches the Friday course, which is mostly the content. And I do the study sessions and the breakouts and stuff like that. It's interesting because project management has kind of an industry standard called the Project Management Book of Knowledge. And they have, different editions that come up, and it's how you run projects. And it's an important skill. These are all very, highly skilled, highly respected professionals who are going through this certification project or class for project management. And a lot of what I have learned, in my dissertation and my work for pedagogy and learner-centeredness totally fits with leadership and melds into project management. So project management 6th edition focused a lot on structure, patterns, and process of how do you lead a project beginning to end with 10 domains: communication, stakeholder, resource management, etc. PMBOK 7 just came out, and it focuses on this other part of relationships and identity and culture, and how do we meld that. And it really fits with this idea of the green line theory that actually the superintendent of Walnut Valley, Dr. Bob Taylor, he runs his organization this way. The green line theory says that above the green line, you have pattern, structure, and process. Mm-hmm. Below the green line, you have relationship, identity, and information. And there is this hallucination that in organizations or in classrooms, if you have good patterns and processes and structures, then everyone will just do what you say and things will be great. Right. But there's these aspects below the green line: relationship, identity, and how we share information. And if we only focus on what's below the green line, nothing gets done, because we do need patterns and structure and process. But if we only focus above the green line, you will not have a healthy organization or a healthy classroom. And so the new project management industry standard really does just adhere to the green line theory of all of these 6
Learner-centered
domains.
project
Yeah,
management. Yeah.
yes, it is. All of these domains work in tandem. And so that's what I'm working on right now.
Awesome.
I teach the cohort, and it's kind of nice because it's like, hey, this is it's just such a melding. Like, it gives some validation to what we're moving towards in our classrooms of like, hey, it's not enough to give them the steps to do this. We also have to build relationship where we know that the people in our orbit know we're supporting their growth, because otherwise they won't want to do the steps, And so the green line theory totally fits with our practice. It totally also fits with what we are preparing kids for, to be able to lead projects, whatever they are, be able to go into whatever setting they want and know how to, navigate it. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. All right. Favorite quote or saying?
Oh, I don't have one. I see yours on the wall on our Zoom.
What are you grateful for?
Okay. I think I'm grateful for the opportunity to keep doing this. Obviously education is going through a lot. We have dropping enrollment everywhere. Every year I still have a position in my district. I'm always grateful for that. I'm grateful for new learning. Grateful for, like, after 11 years, there's still new stuff to do. I'd hate for there never to be a new educational theory out, because then I'd be very bored.
Yep. What's your one hope for the future of education?
Let's see. One hope for the future of education. I think my one hope goes with Maslow's theory. I hope that we are helping kids create a life, the good life. That's what I hope for. I hope we're just helping kids navigate and understand how to get the good life, how to feel safe, feel secure, and self-actualize. Like, that's it. Let's provide them with some survival skills, some safety skills, some belonging. Let's get that self-esteem. So, like what Maslow said, they can live their life content and satisfied. And I think that's my hope for them.
Love it. Love talking to you. Thank you for all you do, Michelle. You are an amazing educator, and excited just to be able to share your expertise with others.
Well, thank you. It's always fun to chat and to hear from other people. So this was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.